Hi there, VC, Steve Whitty here. Time for another video. It's been a little while. You can see the weather's good outside. This is going to be part one of two of showing off my April finds, where I'll show off everything I managed to get hold of in April and just a little brief, brief explanation about the album. So without further ado, so this is Slowdive and Slovaki. I think it's Slovaki, or I think it's how you pronounce it. Now, this is Slowdive's defining masterpiece, a lush, dreamlike album that captures the purest essence of shoegaze at the most emotional and expansive. Released in 1993, it built on the swirling atmospheres of the debut album, Just for a Day, but redefined it with sharper songwriting, deeper textures and a stronger emotional pull. Where many shoegaze albums bury emotion under layers of sound, Slovaki lets its feeling float right to the surface, shimmering like sunlight through mist. Very good. Musically, the album is a gorgeous wash of reverb guitars, soft melancholic vocals and drifting hypnotic rhythms. Tracks like Allison and When the Sun Hits are stunning in their bittersweet beauty, equal parts melody and atmosphere, while more ambient moments like Slovaki Space Station and Here She Comes stretch out into cosmic, weightless soundscapes. Neil Halstead's gentle vocals and Rachel Goswell's ethereal harmonies perfectly complement each other, giving the songs an aching intimacy even at the most sonically dense. Brian Eno's involvement adds subtle electronic flourishes that give the album extra dimension without disrupting its organic feel. There's a real maturity here, a balance between dreamy abstraction and emotional clarity that sets Slovaki apart, not just from Slowdive's peers, but from almost anything else in the shoegaze canon. Though it was initially met with a lukewarm reception in the UK during the grunge-dominated early 90s, Slovakia have since been rightly recognised as a genre-defining classic. It remains a stunning, immersive listen, an album that invites you to drift, dissolve and dream. Now, this copy here is one that's just been reissued, so that's where I managed to snag it off at Amazon, quite a good pre-order price. So there. This is an interesting curio that was given by Pete at the shop. This is the AIMS, if I get it right, AIMS Independent Music Award 2015 package. Dressed up like an old-fashioned 78 album. What you got in here, it was given out at the award ceremony. So what you got inside is you've got an album, which is in teal vinyl. So amongst the acts on the album is Shamar, Errors, Fort Hope, Gengar, JME featuring Skepta, Rachel Clements, Falstrom, Paradigm, and probably the best known act on here, Rival Sons. Then after that, you got a 10-inch EP. Now this is on what they call seawater vinyl. So you've got 4 tracks on this EP by the Brawlers, Hudson Mohawk, Eves and Algiers. And then finally, to finish the package off, you've got a 7-inch single, which was what's classed in honey vinyl. And it's the sort of like the presenter selection, 7-inch, chosen by Alex Levine and John Kennedy. And the acts featured La Priest and Zunzun Iguai, I think is how you pronounce it. It was sealed when I got this, so yeah, it's not worth much, but it's actually quite an interesting timepiece. Susie and the Banshees, Tinderbox. Tinderbox is one of the Susie and the Banshees' most powerful and cohesive albums. A dark, swirling storm of gothic rock, post-punk tension and cinematic atmosphere. Released in 1986, it marked a period of renewed creative energy for the band, thanks in part to the addition of guitarist John Valentine Carruthers, whose shimmering layered guitar textures gives the album a sharp, almost otherworldly edge. Right from the opening track, Candyman, Tinderbox feels urgent and commanding. Susie's voice is fierce and commanding, effortlessly gliding between icy detachment and emotional intensity. Tracks like Cities in the Dust, the album breakout single, combine infectious pop hooks with brooding, apocalyptic imagery, while deeper cuts like 92 and The Party's Fall showcase the band's talent for building slow-burning tension into soaring, dramatic releases. The production is rich without being overbearing, a vast echoing soundscape that feels both intimate and immense. Budgie's inventive drumming and Steve Severin's pulsating bass lines provide a relentless hypnotic foundation that keeps even the dreamiest moments feel grounded and alive. Lyrically, Tinderbox explores themes of decay, disaster and emotional isolation, but there's also strange beauty in its bleakness. It's an album that feels cinematic without being pretentious, emotionally intense without slipping into melodrama. Overall, Tinderbox stands as one of Susie and the Banshees' finest achievements. A darkly beautiful, perfectly crafted record that captures the band at a peak of artistic confidence and invention. Blur's Parklife, yeah, I'll move it there. It's the only Blur album I really wanted on vinyl. Parklife is the album that not only defined Blur's career, but also captured the spirit of mid-90s Britain with wit, swagger and a playful observational eye. Released in 1994, it stands as a cornerstone of the Britpop movement, a vibrant, colourful collection of sharp, catchy songs that blend pop, punk, dance and classic British storytelling into something timeless and infectious. From the bounding energy of Girls and Boys to the cheeky spoken word charm of the title track Parklife, Blur flex their versatility at every turn. Damon Albarn's lyric paints vivid portraits of everyday life, suburban dreams, working class rituals and social absurdities, with a mix of affection and satire. Musically, Graham Coxon's inventive guitar work keeps the album unpredictable, swinging from crunchy riffs to shimmering jangle and back again, while Alex James and Dave Rowntree form a tight, lively rhythm section that gives the songs their restless pulse. Tracks like End of the Century and This Is a Low show a deeper, more reflective side of the band, balancing the album's more cartoonish moments with genuinely melancholy and beauty. The production, courtesy of Stephen Street, is crisp and full of character, bringing every twist and texture to life without sounding overworked. Ultimately, Parklife is a joyous, clever and brilliantly crafted album that feels like a celebration of British eccentricity in all its forms. It's both a time capsule of 90s culture and a record that bursts with life, humour and heart today. Here's a rather tatty copy of Echo and the Bunnymen's Heavens Up Here. Vinyl plays okay. Following the debut Crocodiles, Echo and the Bunnymen returned with Heavens Up Here, a darker, more immersive record that showed a huge leap in ambition and atmosphere. Where the first album had moments of playful energy, Heaven Up Here feels colder and heavier, like a storm rolling in from the sea. Producer Hugh Johns helped the band craft a dense, brooding soundscape that perfectly matched the existential anxiety of the early 80s. Musically, the album is a masterclass of tension and release. Will Sargent's guitar work is both sharp and ethereal, often more about mood than melody, weaving through Les Patterson's deep, resonant bass and Pete de Freitas' tribal driving drums. Ian McCulloch's vocals are theatrical without tipping into melodrama, full of cryptic imagery and aching vulnerability. Tracks like Over the War and All My Colours stretch out with a sense of space and longing, while A Promise and Turquoise Days show a knack for crafting emotional peaks without ever feeling bombastic. Lyrically, Heavens Up Here leans into the themes of isolation, uncertainty and disillusionment, but there's a strange beauty in its gloom. The band captures the feeling of being both overwhelmed by the world and desperate to find meaning within it, a feeling that's as relevant now as it was in 1981. It's not a record that hands itself over easily. It demands patience, but rewards deep listening with richness that's rare in post-punk. Ultimately, Heavens Up Here is a bold, uncompromising statement from a band finding their true voice. It's less immediate than the later, more accessible work, but arguably more powerful because of it. Crocodiles was the sunshine, Heaven's Up Here is the gathering storm. Beautiful, unsettling, and essential. This is an album that completes the mid-period Fleetwood Mac. Penguin is a curious transitional album in Fleetwood Mac's long and winding history. A record that captures the band in flux, moving further from their blues rock roots towards a more eclectic rock sound. Released in 1973, Penguin introduced new members Bob West and Dave Walker into the fold, adding fresh energy but also highlighting some growing identity struggles within the band. Musically, the album is a mixed bag. There are moments of real charm. Christine McVie's contributions like Remember Me and Dissatisfied shine with her signature melodic warmth and emotional clarity. Bob Welsh also steps up with a couple of standout tracks, particularly the dreamy, slightly haunting Revelation. However, the addition of Dave Walker, known for his time in Savoy Brown, feels like a strange fit. His lead vocals on The Derelict and Roadrunner being a pub rock bluesy vibe that jars against the smoother, more introspective direction the band was starting to pursue. Production-wise, the album sounds clean but a little subdued, lacking the magic or drama of the later classic Mac records. It's clear that Fleetwood Mac was still trying to find a new identity post Peter Green, and Penguin, while enjoyable in parts, feels like a snapshot of a band searching rather than fully arriving. In the end, Penguin is an interesting listen for devoted Fleetwood Mac fans, offering glimpses of songwriting brilliance that would soon define the band, but it's far from essential. It stands out as a transitional piece, not quite the blues powerhouse of the past, and not yet the power pop, the pop rock juggernaut of the future. When it comes to late 60s jazz rock fusion, most people immediately think of Blood, Sweat and Tears or Chicago. But lurking deeper in the crate is The Flock, a Chicago-based band that, with their self-titled debut album, The Flock, carved out a niche that was weirder, wider, and in many ways more adventurous than their peers. The standout feature of The Flock is violinist Jerry Goodman, whose electrifying work on the electric violin pushes the album into unexplored territory. Before Goodman went on to greater fame with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, he was here slashing and soaring across songs like Introduction and The Epic Truth. His violin doesn't just sit atop the music, it leads the charge, often replacing what is traditionally the lead guitar. Musically, the album blends bluesy rock riffs, brass-heavy jazz passages, prog rock ambition, and psychedelic jams. Tracks like Clown and Store Fort meander through shifting tempos and moods, veering from tight horns arrangements to freewheeling improvisation. It's easy for me to say. The compositions feel raw, spontaneous, and sometimes gloriously so, sometimes messily so. So it's less polished than their more famous contemporaries, but that loose energy is part of its charm. Vocally, the group isn't as strong. The singing is serviceable, but not particularly memorable. It's the instrumental work, the violin, horns, and groovy bass lines that really defines this album. There's a sense that the Flock was reaching for something genuinely new. While they don't always hit the mark, their fearless experimentation still feels exciting decades later. In short, The Flock is a fascinating, sometimes chaotic, but undeniably passionate album. If you like your jazz rock fusion, a little rough around the edges and full of surprises, this record's for you. By 1991, Kingdom Come had undergone major changes. Gone were most of the original members who helped craft their bombastic Zeppelin-tinged debut. Left standing was frontman Lenny Wolf, who decided to carry the Kingdom Come name forward almost as a solo project with this album, Hand of Time. An album that feels both like a continuation and a reinvention. Hands of Time shows a more melodic, introspective side of Kingdom Come. While earlier albums leaned heavily into bluesy hard rock riffs and comparisons to Led Zeppelin, this release is smoother, more polished, and clearly influenced by the early 90s shift in rock music. The production is slick, emphasising layered guitars, keyboards, and Wolf's soaring emotional vocals. Songs like I've Been Trying and Should I highlight a more thoughtful, ballad-driven approach with themes of loneliness, perseverance, and regret running through the lyric. There's still some classic Kingdom Come swagger, it's tracks like Stay and Can't Deny, but much of the record it has a bittersweet, almost weary feel to it. Fitting considering Wolf had to rebuild the band from scratch. His vocals are in fine form throughout, alienating between soulful crooning and powerful belts, often carrying songs that might otherwise feel a little bit too safe. Critics at the time largely overlooked Hands of Time, and the changing rock landscape didn't help. But in retrospect, it's a solid, heartfelt album. It's not as raw as heavy as their debut, but it showcases Lenny Wolf's growth as a songwriter and captures a moment when 80s hard rock was giving way into something more mature. Couple of comps to close out this first part of the video. Accelerate isn't a traditional Kraftwerk album, it's a comp, but it serves as an important snapshot of a band on the edge of transformation. Released in 1975, just after Autobahn had propelled Kraftwerk into international fame, Accelerate was designed to introduce new listeners to the group's earlier, more experimental work, offering a bridge between their avant-garde beginnings and their streamlined electronic future. The album pulls from Kraftwerk's first four records, Kraftwerk, Kraftwerk 2, Ralph and Florian, and Autobahn, offering edited versions of tracks that originally was sprawling and hypnotic. Songs like Ruckzuck and Autobahn, which was trimmed from its full-length 22-minute version, show Kraftwerk's journey from organic motoric jams to their emerging synthetic minimalist style. Flutes and guitars and live drums dominate the earlier material, with only hints of the fully electronic sound they would soon pioneer. Listening to Accelerate today feels a bit strange, almost like flipping through a photo album of Kraftwerk's childhood years. There's an adventurous, sometimes chaotic spirit here that's mostly absent from the later pristine robotic music. It's fascinating to hear the band before they locked into their ultra-controlled aesthetic they became famous for. As a comp, it's far from essential, but if you're a deep Kraftwerk fan and who wants the full albums, but as an entry point for 1970s listeners, and even today for curious newcomers, Accelerate gives a quick, intriguing glimpse into Kraftwerk's evolution. And the final album in this video, Nazareth's Greatest Hits, released in 1975. It's a tight, punchy collection that captures the raw power, gritty emotion, and surprising versatility of the Scottish hard rockers during their peak years. Rather than just piling on the most obvious singles, this comp is thoughtfully balances their riff-heavy anthems with more soulful ballads, showing off how much range Nazareth really had. Of course, the big hitters are here: the ferocious stomper Razamanaz and the swaggering Bad Bad Boy, and their biggest international smash, the aching, emotionally charged Love Hurts. Dan McCafferty's raspy, weathered vocals are the heart of everything, giving even the softer moments a rough, lived-in edge that feels authentic rather than polished. Meanwhile, the band's blues rock roots, heavy riffs and occasional glam touches make sure things never got too soft for too long. What makes Greatest Hits work is how cohesive it feels, despite pulling from several albums. It's a lean listen, just under 40 minutes, but every track hits with a purpose. There's no filler on this comp. It's a perfect getaway for Nazareth for newcomers and for long-time fans. It's a reminder of how criminally underrated they often were compared to the bigger names of the era. So there you go, VC. That's part one of my April's finds. I hope you liked what I showed. If you did, feel free to comment. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Love the interaction. So I will be recording part 2 very shortly. So whatever you get up to, VC, take care of yourselves and keep spinning, keep smiling, and I'll see you in part 2.